Death Note, Ghost in the Shell, Alita Battle Angel. These are manga and anime projects that wallowed in development hell over the better part of a decade apiece. However, all these years later, they have seen themselves adapted to the big screen with varying levels of success. While these have been some of the highest profile projects to make it overseas in live action form, they are by no means the only ones worthy of a Hollywood adaptation. There are plenty of fantastic stories out there being told over in Japan, and as fans of both anime and Hollywood films, I have a few opinions about which ones I'd like to see make the leap. For this list, I'm looking at projects that, as far as we know, have no announcements for a live-action take, for film or television. Yeah, there is one, admittedly, at this point that was planned for a CG take, or at least it was maybe about 9 or 10 years ago, but I have no idea where in the development pipeline it is at this point, so I'm just going to pretend that it doesn't even exist. But I mean, hell, since I brought it up, I may as well just start with that number 5, Pluto. Now, you may have heard of an anime or manga series called Astro Boy. The show aired in the US decades ago, and despite being an anime, it had very rounded Disney-esque look to it. Author Osamu Tezuka, he was heavily influenced by the style of Walt Disney, and that's kind of why it appealed to a lot of us back in the day. It's really quaint by today's standards, but the stories told in its pages are classics. And it even received a really shitty, relatively recent CG animated adaptation in the US. Now, understanding how timeless many of these stories are in the manga, acclaimed thriller manga author Naoki Urasawa adapted a famous arc into an 8-volume series entitled Pluto. Pluto follows German android detective Gesicht and his investigation of a series of murders, the murders of powerful robots, one of which was an icon of peace in its own country. Little does he know that the rabbit hole goes deeper than even he could possibly imagine. Although based on a rather campy interpretation, as I mentioned, the quaint stories from Tezuka, Urasawa helps bring real living, breathing, futuristic world of nuanced characters and believable motivations. So if you're a fan of mysteries, thrillers, or just plain good storytelling, I highly recommend Pluto. Number 4, Baccano, or Baccano. I don't know how to pronounce it, but one of those two. I pronounced it weird because it's like an Italian word apparently, but I'm used to Japanese being pronounced a certain way, so I don't worry about it. Mostly set in the US, this one already lends itself to an inevitable Americanization that every adaptation is going to go through, and would make a killer 8 to 10 episode miniseries on a service like Hulu or Netflix or any of those things. Amazon Prime, why the hell not? That one too. It follows around a dozen or so characters, with the plot jumping around from the 1800s to a few different years during and around the Prohibition era. Each character is explosive and bombastic in their own way. They all have their own individual plots and goals that crisscross in unexpected and interesting ways. The story is kind of like a big puzzled mosaic. Early on, it doesn't seem to make a lot of sense, and it almost feels like the style outweighs the substance, but as you get further along, the connections start to become all the more clear, and I can only imagine how rewarding the experience would be in a live-action hour-long episode. Number 3, Death Parade. Death Parade is a series that plays out kind of like an extended episode of The Twilight Zone. The story follows Chiyuki, a woman with no memory of her life who stumbles into a fancy bar. This bar, as it turns out, is something of a way station in the journey to the afterlife. When 2 people die at the same time, they're sent to this bar where they participate in parlor games that expose their darkest sides. Based on the revelations during these games, the bartender, Decum, decides who will be sent to hell and who will be sent back to Earth for reincarnation. Over the course of the 12-episode run, Chiyuki assists Decum in this decision-making process and begins to question the entire system. Now, would this to become a film, I think it would have to be approached more along the lines of an indie flick. It wouldn't be a big blockbuster by any means. The visuals would be gorgeous, but apart from that, it really wouldn't take more than around $20 million to make. I guess you can kind of go for almost a John Wick neon aesthetic, but you can go even a little more muted than that. If handled properly, I could almost see this as maybe potentially being sort of an Oscar-type movie. And as far as the director goes, Darren Aronofsky, it seems kind of like right up his alley. The possibilities here are endless. Number 2, 20th Century Boys. Now, this is another story from the master of thrillers, Naoki Urasawa, except it's an original one this time, not an adaptation. This is a story that could not be told in a single film. At the very least, it would take 3, but I could see this being turned into a 5-film series or maybe like 3 or 4 seasons of television when all said and done. Now, I will say this was already adapted into a live-action Japanese movie, but like I said, we're talking Hollywood adaptation, so that doesn't matter. 20th Century Boys is an epic, decades-long, spanning tale that hops around between the 1960s, the 1990s, into the 2000s. Its story ranges from a Stand By Me-esque tale of adolescence and ambition to a futuristic dystopian world in the vein of 1984 and Brave New World. It's one of those stories that's difficult to pitch in a sentence, but I'll take a crack at it. Let's try this out. Kenji has grown up with big ambitions ever since he was a young boy, but as a middle-aged man, his life ultimately seemed to culminate to his running a convenience store and taking care of his young niece, Kana. One day, he stumbles upon the trail of a mysterious cult, and over the course of the next few months, terrorist attacks begin unleashing around the world. What's stranger is that these attacks are being carried out in the same way that he and his friends used to write about decades prior when they were kids. Can Kenji put a stop to these attacks and the rise of a cult before it's too late? Alright, that was really cheesy, but I think you get the point. It's really fucking cool. It's a film and a series that is very grand in scope, and I could very well see the likes of David Fincher tackling the subject matter. Number 1, Summer Wars. So I've been going with like long-running shows a bit for this one, for this list. This time I'm going with something that's actually a movie already. It came out as an original anime movie, is it 2010 or so? Of all the anime on the list, I think this is the easiest to put together because it's already the feature-length story and it's very Hollywood-like in its structure. Set in sort of an alternative present day, Summer Wars revolves around a social network / utility that is taken over by a malevolent virus. This virus threatens to cripple business activity and it, in effect, holds the world hostage. In this time of peril, the world bands together to take down this virus and save the world as we know it. It's a high concept for sure, and given that it's set during a family reunion, the movie is also careful to give the audience a vested interest in the characters, not just sort of the Hollywood-like premise. Now, in order to make this work, all that would need to be done is for the setting to be adapted from a Japanese countryside to a rural American countryside, and you're pretty much set. All the stuff kind of takes care of itself from there. Make a couple tweaks here and there, and you'll pretty much have a perfect little piece of escapism that audiences could run to. I think it'd be very well received. It's action-packed, it's heartfelt, it has all the great aspects of any story. So that's my number 1 pick. It's really easy, Hollywood. Take it. But what do you think? What anime or manga out there do you think would make great live-action Hollywood interpretations? Let us know your thoughts in the comments down below. And of course, be sure to give us a thumbs up if you liked the video. We really would appreciate it. It helps us out a whole lot. And if you like our content, give us a subscribe. In addition to all these LRM Ranks It videos, we have other content like lots of celebrity interviews courtesy of GigPada, among many other things. And of course, don't forget to visit lrmonline.com for the latest film and TV news and analysis.
Hey everybody, did you like what you just watched? Do you want to see more? Check out the other great videos available here on the LRM Online YouTube channel. Also, go check out our website, lrmonline.com, to see all the great stories that we publish every day.